Player 2 has joined the game.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to the very first ever Patreon-only exclusive episode of Two Player Co-op. As always, I'm your host here, Kevin, along with my brother from my mother, Sean.
How we doing?
We're doing fantastic. Thank you if you're a $10 or above patron on Patreon that you're seeing this. We don't need to go through the whole rigmarole and everything because you're already a Patreon. You're already a patron. Dang it. That's so tough. I'm going to get used to it at some point.
You're a Patreon.
You're a presentation tutor. Tutor. We're just going to have a lot of fun here. These are going to be different from our normal episodes, and I don't know what they're going to look like in the future, but for this first one, what we wanted to do was simply go through something we've wanted to talk about for a long time now. And we wanted to finally sit down and say, okay, let's do this. We're going to rank our personal top 10 favorite consoles of all time. Now, spoiler alert, there are no Xboxes on this list. At first, I was just like, even though I've never played these systems more than 5 minutes, I feel like I should put them on there. And then I was like, no, this is stupid.
You either had to go all in and just say, this is our personal favorite. Because if we're going to include Xbox, we know it's not going to get it's just due as it was.
We're going to say these games were good, I guess, but I never played them.
Right. Like we would put them on there. Exactly. We don't know enough to really make an informed decision. We would just be putting them on there because we know they belong somewhere. And at that point, what's the point? So we're just doing our own personal favorites from our personal experience.
Yeah. I mean, I've played Halo, but I played that on PC. But I played it on PC.
Oh, well.
So, like, I don't know. But just, it's our personal top 10 list. What we did was we both said, all right, we're going to rank our top 10 list separately. And we did have some disagreements. We both had a console very high up on one's list that didn't even make the other list, and that all balanced out.
But for the most part, we were closer to being aligned than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Besides those two, like you said.
So at the end, we'll run through what our actual lists were. But right now, we want to get to our actual top 10 lists. Thank you guys so much for being here. Like, really, the fact that we're even making a Patreon-only exclusive episode is just insane to me.
That's pretty cool.
It's awesome. So thank you guys so much. Let's get right into it. Sean, number 10. We had some dissension here. But at the end of the day, we went with our number 10 console. Number 10 system, I should say. From here on out, I'll say console. The 3DS comes in at number 10. Some of the games I've got written down here include Samus Returns, A Link Between Worlds, New Super Mario Bros. 2, Mario Maker, Zelda, both Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, both the way to play either of those games, especially if you've got the XL screen. Pokemon Sun and Moon, you've got the Virtual Console. You can play SNES games on there and stuff, all that. You can play any of the DS games on there as well as if you wanted to because it's backwards compatible, but when I think of the 3DS, so what this came down to for us was, spoiler alert, either the 3DS and the Wii were tied. And we're like, who do we make number 10 and who do we kick out? Yeah, and we ended up going with the 3DS. I think it's because of the games that I mentioned there are all top friggin' tier games. Like, I love Metroid. Link Between Worlds is probably like my 11th, 12th favorite game of all time. Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D. Like I said, the definitive way to play either of those games now. Like, the heavy hitters, and I didn't even name like Super Mario Party 100, and there's all kinds of other games, but those were like the biggest releases to me when I think of the 3DS.
Yeah.
And when I think of the Wii, I really just think of
Wii Sports and like Wii Fit
and Guitar Hero 3.
Yeah.
Which was available on everything at that time, but like, I love the Wii, but I do think the 3DS should be, if we had to kick something out, I'm perfectly fine kicking out the Wii for the benefit of the 3DS.
And like we kind of discussed, the reason that I was kind of in favor of putting the 3DS on there over the Wii is I was getting the Wii up there partially to, I wouldn't say a majority of it, but because of the Virtual Console.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. That's a part of it. But I think the 3DS I want to look at those two. When it comes down to just those two, I think ultimately you need to judge it on their own merit, not just like, hey, here's a bunch of other games that we've already had. Let's make them available on here as well. Even though that was one of the smartest things they could do. Somehow the Switch still can't figure it out. But yeah, like you said, Samus Returns and A Link Between Worlds alone, not to mention the two 3D Zelda remakes, we had to give the nod to the 3DS there.
Yeah, and I feel fine with it. I mean, the Wii did have Galaxy 1 and 2. It had a Smash game, Twilight, but that also came out on the GameCube. Skyward Sword, which a lot of people don't like it. It's the motion control. It's very hub world-ish. It's not that, it doesn't make sense. New Super Mario Wii, and then, like Sean said, the Virtual Console. But the Virtual Console, it's just like, hey, all these other systems had games that were better than your game, so you can play. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it should factor in as much, but that was one of the reasons I was kind of trying to put it in there. But it's like, that's not even Wii games. Like, it revolutionized the whole retro game thing for a new audience, but at the end of the day, the rest of the catalog wasn't that strong.
Right. Well, the funny thing is we both had the Wii on our individual top 10s, and yet it did not make our collective top 10.
Yep. We both had it either 9 or 10, but we also either had the 3DS and the Wii as 9 or 10. They tied for the same amount of points. We said, who are we going to vote off? And we kicked the Wii off the island. Thoughts and prayers to you, Nintendo Wii. Number 9, this is something I had on my list, and Sean did not. And we'll have that again here with the next item. But number 9, lower than I thought it should have been, but I get it. PlayStation 3. Some notable games include Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, God of War 3, Resistance 1, 2, and 3, Metal Gear Solid 4, regardless of what you think about that. I put that in there, but I'm like, I don't even really like that game that much anymore. Of course, they were not exclusive, but you had Guitar Hero 3, you had Rock Band, you had the Arkham games, GTA 4 and 5, and then, of course, Red Dead Redemption 1, which was Red Dead 2, but it was Red Dead Redemption 1, and then you got Red Dead Redemption, you know what I mean. And then, of course, they closed out the console generation with The Last of Us. PS3 to me, I obviously thought of it more highly than you did. I think it's because of my connection, my deep and long connection to the Uncharted games, which you don't have. You played through a little bit of 1, you beat 2, never played 3. God of War 3, we both love. You didn't play the Resistance games.
Nope.
Neither of us really like Metal Gear Solid 4 that much anymore. The console got off to a horrible start. $600, get a second job. Ha, 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 ha. Titus, like, what? Why?
Well, that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of... I recognize that there are a lot of very high-quality games on the system. However, again, being our own personal top 10s, like you said, Uncharted, the only one I've really played through was 2. God of War 3 is fantastic. I didn't play Resistance. Metal Gear Solid 4... That's just
it was great.
It was an odd one.
At the time when I beat it the first time, it was my favorite game of all time. It's now probably not even in my top 25 or 30.
Yeah, I don't know. Guitar Hero 3 I had on Wii. That's really what I think of when it comes to that. The Arkham games were great. GTA 4, that's another one that fell off pretty quickly with me. GTA 5, I get it. I don't really think of it as a PS3 game. Same thing with The Last of Us. And also, I looking back, I can't not take points off in this imaginary scale I have in my head because of, like you said, how bad they botched the release and this stupid cell processor crap that has made it so none of these games are backwards compatible now. And it's just like, I do think you can't just look at the games that are on the system. I think you need to look at the entire package. And to me, that system was just kind of a train wreck.
Yeah.
Some of these games are great, but that system was just so jacked up from the beginning that... Now, granted, it wasn't far off. If I kept going, it probably would have been number 11 for me. It's not like it was last place, but it didn't make my top 10.
Yeah, I'm shocked that it ended up selling almost as many as the X360 did. Because the X360 was I mean, it came out a year earlier also, which is unheard. We'll never have that happen again. Like the Xbox 2 and the PS5 are going to come out within 1 week of each other, just like the 1 and the 4 did. But the Xbox 360 came out November 05. The PlayStation came out in North America November 06. That will never happen again where you get a year head start.
Well, it also had a little bit of the same advantage that we talked about last time we were talking about sales numbers, where you were talking about how the PS2, it was so high because a lot of people just bought it to have a DVD player. I got my PS3 for free because Best Buy had some deal where it's like buy an HD TV and get a free Blu-ray player. And I'm like, can I just pick a PS3? And they're like, let me talk to my manager. And they're like, yeah, you can do that. I'm like, done. And that's the only reason I have it. Now, that's not to say I wouldn't have just bought one eventually anyway, but I never even had to pay for it. Yeah. So, and when I was looking back, when I dug that game out for you, when I was looking back at some of the games I have, I'm just like, it's almost like some of the games I bought, I'm like, I got this system for free. I might as well get some games on it. And I was just buying random stuff, and none of them were that great. There's not much that I miss from the PS3.
I had a lot of sports games on it. I liked the re-releases on it. Like I had the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, so 2, 3, and Peace Walker in HD, beautiful. For 3 of my 25 favorite games of all time. God of War, they brought God of War and God of War 2 to the PS3. They up-resed them a little bit. Those games were pretty anyways to begin with. And then they did the Origins collection, which was God of War, Chains of Olympus, and Ghosts of Sparta, the PSP games. They up-res. Those look like completely new games compared to the PSP version. Yeah. And they put them out on PS3. Like, there's so many of the... Like, Shadow of the Colossus got re-released on PS3 before it was re-released on PS4. And, you know, well, I shouldn't say re-released, completely remade on PS4, but you know what I mean. But yeah, it's not so... It's like the Uncharted series... Resistance 1 and 2, I never got to play 3, which still haunts me to this day. Metal Gear Solid 4 at the time, favorite game of all time, not even close now. GTA 4, loved it at the time, not anymore. You know, it's like...
Nico,
do you want to play the dots? We haven't said that on here in a long time. But, yeah. I'm glad it made the top 10.
It should. I think it's rightfully... I think it's where it should be.
Yeah.
In the end.
Now, next up is the other one that we completely disagreed on. This did not even make my top 10 list, but it did make Sean's. Number 8, the Nintendo 64. Notable games include Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, GoldenEye, Mario Kart 64, Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, Smash started there, Donkey Kong 64, Paper Mario started there, the WWF games, which are so important, and to be fair, in the WCW games as well. We're not talking about Attitude and Warzone or whatever they were. No. We're talking about the THQ, AKI, or AKI, however you say, the best wrestling games ever made. To this day, still the 3 best wrestling games ever made are No Mercy, WrestleMania 2000, and WCW NWO Revenge.
Now, one thing I saw randomly, small segue, on Twitter recently, what was WCW? I think it was called WCW NWO World Tour.
World Tour.
That was not in that same vein, right?
It was like the year before. There was also a Thunder game, which was weird as well.
Okay.
But it was
those were more style. Like the old WWF games,
pretty much.
Kind of. Yeah. Okay. Because I saw that, I'm like, wait, no, it was Revenge that was the No Mercy type game. I was
right.
Like, what was World Tour? But yeah, the N64. I don't know why, but in addition to just having what is probably my favorite game of all time on it, just always stood out to me. And I don't know why, but like when I got it for Christmas, I don't know why, but there's something about it to where in my mind it was like, I cannot believe
it was
I have an N64 right now. Like, this is unbelievable. Like, I just couldn't even process that I had it. And I got it with Ocarina, and then it was just like, yeah, I mean, then there was no turning back. Mario 64, I think, is a very important game. I don't think it's that great, but it kind of set the stage for what these types of games would be in the future. basically every 3D Mario game, not every, but Mario 64, Sunshine, Galaxy,
they're all based
Odyssey,
off of that foundation.
Exactly. All of your like Banjo-Kazooie games, Donkey Kong 64, all of these games basically followed the recipe that Mario 64 created. I know it's sacrilege, highly overrated game, but I understand its importance. GoldenEye.
Never got into it.
Mario Kart 64. This is a lot of people's favorite Mario Kart game. It's probably my least favorite,
I hate
honestly.
that game.
I just think the controls
I would
are
rather
awful.
play the SNES game than the N64.
Right. I would almost want to put this system on the list just for like No Mercy. Like that game was that good to me.
Yeah.
It was just so much fun. Donkey Kong 64 at the time was probably one of my top 5 games of all time.
Wow.
I loved that game. It was everything I wanted it to be. If there was a platinum, I probably would have had it. Like that was one of those games that I just did everything you could in it. Paper Mario, good to great game. I think the GameCube one is the perfect Paper Mario game, but this was kind of the original and is not far behind it. And then it started getting weird on like the Wii one and I think there's one on 3DS, or maybe it was just the DS. They were kind of... No, it was the 3DS. They were both kind of But this one was like... Oh, God, it was so much fun. I mean, I'm looking back at this, and the system hasn't aged well, I don't think. Like, a lot of these games would just look awful now, and some of them, like GoldenEye, for example, are borderline unplayable. But there are some very, very important games on this system, and like I said, possibly my number 1 game of all time in Ocarina.
I think for me, what always has hurt me with that system is that's when, as I've talked about on here, if you've listened to us for a while, that's when I was going through my phase where, I mean, it came out in 96. I was still in high school, but we were still playing the Saturn when it first came out. And after that, probably because the Saturn just about broke me, that's kind of when I started falling out of video games, going into last couple of years of high school.
And see, the funny thing is that happened to me around the PS3 era.
Well, there you go. That's perfect.
That makes sense why I have the N64 on there and you had the PS3. But yeah.
I mean, obviously I love Ocarina of Time. Now that I finally played, but I've never beaten either of those games on the N64. I beat both of them on my 3DS. I probably should at some point get Mario 64, the DS version, and just play it on my 3DS, just so I can.
You should play
say
it.
I actually played it. And I think that re-release is supposed to be pretty darn good from what I've heard too. So
yeah,
but yeah, I think it's just that was my dark time in gaming because the Saturn just tricked us and. Yeah.
Gosh, you've got me. If I remember to next year, just because I'm going to throw that out there as a prediction, I want to get a true remake of Mario 64. Better graphics, better controls, like have it look like Odyssey, but just make Mario 64 look like that. And I think that would be awesome.
You know what's crazy? Odyssey came out almost 2 years ago. October 2017. It feels like Zelda was way before that, even though it was only like 6 months or whatever.
7 months. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Anything else about N64?
No, there's not a lot I can add, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah. Next up, number 7, the most recent console on our list, the Nintendo Switch. Now, this is really a case of. This is where it's at right now. You've still got... We'll probably get another Mario game on it. We're going to get Metroid Prime 4.
I see the Switch moving up.
I could see this breaking into the top 5.
Yeah.
But we've got Breath of the Wild 2, Metroid Prime 4, probably another Mario. Who knows what else we're going to get on the system. But like... It's only been out for
Link's
2.5 years.
Coming.
Link's Awakening. Maybe...
If we did this list 6 months from now, who knows? Maybe...
Right.
Now, to be fair, on our... point system, this actually tied with our next entrant.
Correct.
We gave the other one the nod. Just we'll talk about it more in a little bit, but basically it comes down to the Switch just not quite being there yet.
Yep.
So we put the Switch the bottom of these two.
But I mean, man, if you look at some of the games, Breath of the Wild, Odyssey, Smash Ultimate, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the best Mario Kart, don't at me, Mario and Rabbids, Mario Maker 2, thank you God, Celeste, Splatoon 2, Hollow Knight, Octopath Traveler, and now just recently, just throwing it in there because a lot of people are seeming to like it, even though the critical response was not amazing, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
So, like I said, I think this system will continue to move up. I think if we did this list again in a year from now, I bet it's, I mean, right now we have it 7. I bet it's at least 6, if not 5.
I'm so interested to see when Breath of the Wild 2 is going to come out. Like,
I can't
I'm starting
imagine we're
to think
anywhere near it. You think it's a 2020?
In a perfect world, yes. I think it's March 2021.
That I could believe.
That's 4 years after Breath of the Wild. Same engine. All the you can reuse a lot of stuff. Yeah,
I could see that. But yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild. When I first finished it, it was in the running for my top game of all time. It's dropped a little bit. I still have such an appreciation for everything about that game. It's still somewhere in the top 5. I don't think I can put it higher than 3.
I think I had it 4. I had God of War 2018 above it, Link to the Past, and then Metal Gear Solid 3.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still fine with that.
Right.
If they, what's interesting to me is what Breath of the Wild 2, if they get rid of the breakable weapons and if they give us 6, 7, 8 dungeons, you may have my number 4 and number 5 games could go Breath of the Wild 2, Breath of the Wild 1. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Depending on what they actually do with it, which none of us have any idea. But as much as I've kind of crapped on Odyssey as well, my time, like I went back and listened to our podcast a week into it when we reviewed it, and the amount of fun that I had in New Donk City and the 2D sections, and just like I said in the podcast, I had a smile on my face the entire time I was playing it. Now, that didn't stick.
And that song, the Jump,
Jive, and Wail.
Yeah, whatever that song was.
Jump Up Superstar.
There
Is that
you
what it's
go.
called?
Yeah, it was so good.
And that's the thing, like for the time I had with it, the 15 hours or so I played to beat it, I liked it. But then it's like I just got sick of the collecting, and I didn't want to beat the moon. I don't worry about spoilers at this point. I didn't want to beat the moon. I wasn't ever going to go back and try to get every moon everywhere else, Power Moon, whatever they were called. But I can still recognize it was a very, very good game.
Oh, absolutely. I think another thing that's going to carry the Switch pretty far is they're very indie accessible.
Yeah.
And a lot of those indie type games are just perfect to play in handheld mode.
Yep.
Even though I've done it, Breath of the Wild has never quite seemed right handheld. Same with Odyssey. Any of these like big type games.
Even playing the Messenger for me was tough in handheld mode because it's just some of those platforming sections where you got to go from like lantern to lantern and go up on the wind thing, and it's tough. It's tough when you start getting the claw on both
right,
hands.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, and there's a time after Breath of the Wild, and maybe, I can't remember if it was after I had cooled off of Odyssey. There's a time where I was like, man, I don't regret buying the Switch, but I'm like, it hasn't quite lived up to the hype.
Yeah.
And I still don't know, like...
Ultra Street Fighter 2, that's another one I forgot to mention.
I love that game. That might be my favorite Street Fighter game. I just think it's perfect. It's definitely climbed back up there, and I don't see it. I mean, it is very much still on the rise.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm excited to see where we go from here. Honestly, if they would have just done the stupid NES and SNES games on it the way it should be, where they're just all there because there's no reason for them not to be, I might put this at 6 easily, maybe 5 right now. Like, it's pretty tight here, these next few. The Switch is right there for moving up, I would say.
Yep, I agree. We're going to talk about one other system that has the potential for both of us to move up, I think, with one more game. I will say that. Number 6, though, the PlayStation 1. So this was, like Sean was just alluding to, these tied in our rankings between the two of us. One of us had it higher, one higher than the other one. We ended up giving it to the PS1 just because it's still relevant 24 years after its release. The PS Classic sucked. We know that, but the actual PlayStation 1 was amazing. I mean, if you run through these games like Metal Gear Solid, Symphony of the Night, Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. I think 6 also came out on it as like a re-release. The Crash Trilogy, the Spyro Trilogy, Street Fighter Alpha Trilogy, Ultimate Mortal Kombat, Tomb Raider series, Twisted Metal series, Gran Turismo started there, the Tony Hawk games. Like, while these games don't really, from a just looking at the games, they don't necessarily hold up. Like, and the N64 doesn't as well. That early polygonal style of games,
it just did not
doesn't
age
hold
well.
up. Whereas 8-bit, whereas the NES and SNES hold up to this day. They look, even Mario 1, still to this day, to me, it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, but you're never going to see somebody make a retro, even 10, 15, 20 years from now. They will still be making retro games that look like NES and SNES. Nobody's going to make games that look like the N64
Nobody's
and the PS1.
going to make Laura Croft with her...
Like, it's just, it looks bad, and it.
But the actual games, and that's why, but like the first two games I listed there, which I think are, to me, easily the best two games on the console. I know you disagree with that, but Metal Gear Solid 1 and Symphony of the Night, while Metal Gear Solid was 3D and it was blocky and it was kind of ugly, like I first actually played it on PC, which was the same style of graphics. It was just cleaner it was just cleaner squares and rectangles, you know?
Right, yeah.
The game just works, and I've said it many times on here. That game is the reason I still play video games to this day. I didn't experience Symphony of the Night until last year when I finally I played it before that, but I never got into it other than 15, 20 minutes. Last year I finally played through it, and I was like, this is the best Metroidvania ever. It's better than Super Metroid. It's better than Bloodstained this year. And Final Fantasy 7 is a game that I just cannot wait to play the remake on. I'll never touch 8 or 9. But like, what are some of your? And I didn't even list because I played on the PS Classic, and now it sucks. But like Battle Arena Toshinden, you know, like games, the Tekken games, Ridge Racer. There's other games I could put on this list that, while the visuals don't hold up as well as some of the other older systems, the PlayStation 1, looking back, it set the world on fire. It was freaking amazing, and it sold over 100 million units as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, everything you just said. I don't have nearly the appreciation for Metal Gear Solid as you, obviously, but I can agree it's a fantastic game and probably an even more important game. Symphony of the Night, like you said, probably the best Metroidvania game out there. I'm not a huge Resident Evil 3 fan. It was okay, but 1 and 2 are fantastic.
Yep.
Final Fantasy 7, obviously, it's a top 5 game all time for me. Maybe, gosh, I don't know. It's right in that 3 to 5 range. I played 9. I really enjoyed it. I never finished it. 8 I've missed out on, but I keep hearing about how good it is, and I'm going to get it when they do the re-release on Switch. I mean, you just can't, like, everybody had a PlayStation. The PlayStation essentially, even though Nintendo kind of started it, the PlayStation essentially killed Sega.
Oh, they 100% killed Sega.
That was it.
They put Nintendo put them in the coffin, and then Sony was like,
exactly.
They put the nails in. So
I mean, you can't understate the importance of the PlayStation. First, well, no, I was gonna say it's the first disc-based system, but that's not true. But I mean, it's the first one to really do it right.
Yeah.
And like you said, the graphics don't hold up, but I think in spite of that, a lot of the games still do.
Yep.
The fact that I can still play Final Fantasy VII and say that it's one of my favorite games of all time, despite how it looks.
It looks so stupid.
It does.
It looks so stupid. Even when I played it on PS4 with like the PC updated graphics and stuff, I was like, this looks absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, number 5. This might come as a shock to some of y'all, but if you've been listening to us a while, it should not. Number 5, Sean, the Sega Genesis. So we both had this right about the same level on our list. I think I had it one spot higher than Sean. Yes, I did. But the Genesis, it gets a lot of flack, and I am so excited for my Genesis Mini. I just wish it came out more than a day before Link's Awakening, because
it's awful.
we're gonna have to just that Thursday night. We're gonna have to do a couple Let's Plays, because then that thing's gonna go. It's gonna go away for a bit until I can finish Link's Awakening. But the Genesis, if you want to go through some of the most important games on this system, like let's just say this. Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles, Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3, Crusader Ascenti, Beyond Oasis, Gunstar Heroes, Castlevania Bloodlines, Comic Zone, Rocket Knight Adventures, Contra Hardcore, Road Rash series, Hyperstone, TMNT, Hyperstone Heist, both Mickey and the Castle of Illusion and the World of Illusion, Columns, Vector Man, I don't even think I even put that on the Vector Man games, Rystar, Dynamite Heady, like Phantasy Star. When I started listing this out, I was like, I was trying to be somewhat impartial with where I ranked this because of how much this system meant to us as kids. And when I started actually listing the games and how many great games there are, and so many of them are included on the Genesis Mini, I'm like, when I went into this, I was thinking maybe it'd be like 8, 9, 10, something like that. And then as I kept going through it, I was like, this isn't just nostalgia. There are some great games on the Sega Genesis. Now, the way to play it is with a 6-button controller. I will say that even if you don't need all 6 buttons, the controller just feels so much better. That's why I bought 2 of them for the Genesis Mini. Like, I don't know why Japan's the only ones that get the 6-button controllers.
That makes no sense.
Eternal Champions, I forgot to mention that. Mortal Kombat with the Blood Code, Abacab, Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition. Not better than Turbo, but to us, it was we probably played the game for 120 hours or something.
Right.
But I think it's it's right about where it should be, right in the middle of our top 10 list at number 5, the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, God, there are a lot of legitimately good games on the Genesis that I just think don't tend to get the recognition they deserve. Obviously, games like Crusader of Senti and Beyond Oasis, we, as well as a lot of other people, are always going to just look at as, especially Senti,
It's
just
Zelda
clones. Yeah. But they are great games. Like,
period.
Yeah, like they're no Zelda, but they are, and neither of them probably would have existed if it weren't for Zelda.
Correct.
But they're both very good games. Gunstar is just.
That's the one I'm most looking forward to. That's the first Let's Play we're going to do is Gunstar Heroes.
Oh, absolutely.
I cannot freaking wait to play that again.
I mean, that's just, honestly, that's an easily all-time, probably top 25, 30. Like, it's up there.
Yeah. I think, spoiler alert for if we ever do our top 10 Genesis games, top 10 list, I think it's my number 1. It's there. It's that or Sonic 2
easily
or 3.
Top 3. Yeah. Castlevania Bloodlines, I think we said is better than Castlevania 4 when we did the verses.
Yep.
Rocket Knight, another just all-around fantastic game. Hardcore, not the best Contra game, but it's
if you can get through that first stage, it opens up.
That's
but it
true.
is just so overbearing in that first level with so many explosions and so many bullets that you just cannot keep track of everything.
Right. And I think just as much as just looking at this list of games is making me really kind of go back and appreciate the Genesis more than I think I probably was. I think the Genesis Mini, even though I'm not going to get it, but I'm going to play it plenty, is going to do that even more so.
You should just ask for it for Christmas.
I'll probably end up getting it.
And it won't be sold out like the NES.
No, I'll be able to. Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of good games on that system.
It's so important to us, and I really think it gets shortchanged by a lot of people. People just hate Sonic, or it's not as powerful as the Super Nintendo. It didn't have Mario, it didn't have Zelda, whatever. But
But it did have blast processing.
It did, and
you can't take that away.
That was a real thing. That was a real thing. All right, next up is number 4. We agreed on both number 3 and number 4. When I was thinking about this, I had this system lower, and then when I was like my top 3 were set, and then I was looking at the games, I was like, number 4 is the PlayStation 2. Like, I don't know why in my mind I discount this before I actually think about it.
I almost put this at 3.
Wow.
It was close.
Yeah. It was a solid number 4. It couldn't go any lower than that. But the PS2, obviously, God of War 1 and 2, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, Shadow of the Colossus, Final Fantasy 10, 12, right?
Yep.
Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Those were all, I think they were all exclusive to the PS2 for like at least a year before
At the
they
time,
hit the Xbox.
they were. Yeah.
Devil May Cry started there, Ratchet and Clank, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, Jack and Daxter, but like this is SOCOM. Like I'm trying to think of games that I didn't list. Sly Cooper.
I enjoyed SOCOM.
Sly Cooper. That was where the sports games went to the next level as well. You might not be as big a fan of them, but like that's where the Madden games became Madden games, and even like triple play baseball and NBA 2K, all this other stuff. Like that's the system where it went from to sports games that
Actually
we now know and love.
Right.
But like, I mean, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, my favorite game of all time is on this system. So right there, that bumps it way up the list. Metal Gear Solid 2 was one of those games that, and it's one of the reasons I'm so interested to see what happens with Metal Gear Solid 5 10 years from now, how people look at that, you know? Because when it came out, I was also the mind, like, I love the way Metal Gear Solid 2 plays, and it's so cool, and it's like it's like Metal Gear on steroids, but what the hell is this whiny little Raiden, and what the hell is Scissor 61, and all this other stuff. Now, in the world we live in today, where he who controls the flow of digital information controls the world, this game is more relevant than ever, and I've been saying this for the last 3 years, I think. Like, this game just keeps getting more and more relevant and more important, and it just keeps cranking up my list like one game every year or something. Like eventually I'm going to be like, yeah, it's in my top 10 now. I don't know what happened, but like, and the God of War games were revolutionary at the time. Like,
oh yeah,
the PlayStation 2, and it's also the best selling console of all time. And I don't think anything will top it. 150, what did we say? 154 million, I think. Like they were still making MLB The Show on this thing until a couple years ago, I think.
Really?
Yes. Like, that's how people were still playing this thing. But what do you think about the PS2, Sean?
I mean, like I said, I almost had this at number 3. I ultimately put it 4 where you had it. But, yeah, I mean, I owe a lot. When I got this, I remember, I think I was just talking to you and saying, because I think I got this in like October. I don't know if I just bought mine. I don't remember how I came to own this, but
I don't remember how I got mine either.
But I remember
know I got it for Metal Gear Solid 2.
I remember talking to you about, hey, what game should I get? And you're like, get Metal Gear Solid 2. I'm like, and at the time, I didn't know what that game was. I think in my head, I pictured.
Had you played one? I don't think you played one yet. Okay.
And it wasn't even the kind of game. I think I was picturing Metal Gear Solid, and by extension, Metal Gear Solid 2. In my head, I almost was picturing them as like not Contra, but like Smash TV or something. Well,
that's what we thought Metal Gear on the NES was.
Yeah,
and it was
exactly.
Not.
And so maybe I just carried that with me. But Metal Gear Solid 2, I fell in love with that game. And I didn't have the same negative impact when I found out you were playing as Raiden, because I'm like, well, I don't really know much about Snake anyway. Sure, we'll give this guy a chance. Final Fantasy X is the first true role-playing game I think that I played. I just kind of bought it on a whim when it was like I found it pre-owned it. I think it was still EB Games at the time. Oh. And I picked it up for like $20 and was like, yeah, let's I'm going to dive in. I'm going to try to learn this, because at the time I remember just thinking it was so just above me and like, I don't know, I'm not going to be able to figure this out.
That's how I still think of turn-based RPGs would be. Yeah.
And then I've it's one of my favorite games of all time. Final Fantasy 12 is also up there. I love all 3 Jack and Daxter games. I still wish they would get, I know there are re-releases out, not remakes, but remasters, whatever. I've heard not so good things about them. I kind of wish they'd get good, like true remakes. Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, I still never finished 2, but 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, there's just so many good games. God of War. I mean, the PlayStation 2 was... Okay, it's really good. And it's also around... the time where a lot of games. PS2 is. It almost seems like it's around the time when games started, at least for me, transitioning from. They just started becoming, and not always in a good way, more just epic in scale.
God of War, for crying out loud.
Right.
Holy crap.
And with that kind of was the end of the like replay factor for me. And I think that's why I still kind of prefer a lot of the older games, because it's just so much fun to just pick those up and play through them again. I've beaten Metal Gear Solid 3, I think, a couple times. Metal Gear Solid 2, probably 3 or 4 times. Final Fantasy X, I've beaten probably 5 or 6 times. 12, I've beaten probably 3 or 4 times. Kingdom Hearts, I think I've beat 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow.
And there's not many games that are coming out today that I have much of a desire, no matter how good the game is, I don't have that much of a desire to go back and play through it again. And I feel like that era was starting to die around the PS2, but there were still a lot of games that I went back and played multiple times. But, God, there's some heavy hitters on the PS2.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I don't know why. Before we did this list, for some reason, when I think about it, I had it way further down the list, but I was like, no, this is better than the PS3. In my mind, it is. Like, I don't know why I have that mindset around it, but when I actually sat back and started looking at the games, I was like, no, this is almost hard to.
Honestly, I had, again, when I was dating that game out, I came across a bunch of my PS2 games. I have a lot of first-person shooters on that system.
Really?
And I think that's before they just all became so
they weren't
multiplayer focused.
Yeah.
Like 13, I love that game. Red Faction 1 and 2. Medal of Honor Rising Sun, I think, is the one I had. Like, I had a lot of just random first-person shooters, and I enjoyed them immensely.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't anymore, but God. I think the PS2 also, well, no, it would still be the NES or the Genesis, but I guess we co-own those. Besides those two, of all the systems I've owned on my own, PS2 by far, I've had the most games. Now, if you don't count PS4, like all the PS Plus games and stuff like that, whatever. But like physical copies of games, I have so many games on the PS2 that I've totally forgotten about.
See, I ended up trading so many of them in, which I hate, because I probably got pennies on the dollar. Like, I had Virtua Fighter 5 on there. I've still got Blood Money. But I turned in, I think I turned in Gran Turismo 3, which I never loved that much, but it's still, like a lot of people say, one of the best racing games ever made. And I didn't even, wait, did I put, I think I said Gran Turismo, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, number 3, we both agreed on. And these next 3, if somebody wants to argue one or the other, I can't really argue with it at all. But number 3 for us, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Legend of Zelda, Mario 1, Mario 2, Mario 3, all 3 Ninja Turtle games, 6 Mega Man games, Contra, Super C, Castlevania 1 and 3, we don't talk about 2, Dr. Mario, Tetris, Kirby, DuckTales, Tecmo World, Tecmo Super Bowl, Star Tropics, Battletoads. Some personal favorites here, like RC Pro-Am, for crying out loud. We had so much fun. I can't believe that wasn't 2-player. Why wasn't that game? Now, the sequel was 2-player, but we didn't own that. We just had the first one.
I don't think I knew the second one was 2-player.
Micro Machines, for crying out loud. I'll never forget racing around with the Cheerios everywhere and the spilled milk and everything, and doing the boats in the bathtub and stuff. It's just so good. Also, Ninja Gaiden 1, 2, and 3. Metroid, which isn't as high for me, but I know why people love it so much, and we got yelled at about it for not being on our top 10 NES games list. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Like, I could go on and double dribble, play action football, John Elway. There's so arch rivals. Like, I could go on and just keep the skate or die. What was the snowboarding game that Tim had? Shreddin', whatever that was called. There's so many games that are so good, and the PS2 for me was more. It didn't have the most great games, but the great games it had are all like 9.5 or above.
Right.
Like all those games I mentioned, they're all just top-notch games. The NES has the quality, but it's also got the quantity. And like Colin always says, it's still his favorite system is the NES. He puts it over the SNES.
Really?
He puts it over the PS4. He puts it over everything. And I can't argue with that. I really can't.
Yeah.
My argument would be the SNES did those games, all those games I just mentioned.
Did them better.
It did, except
pretty much.
I would say I like Castlevania 3 better than 4. Super Metroid's better than Metroid. Contra 3 is better than Contra.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, you could even argue to me, you could. Those are kind of neck and neck. But the NES, I mean, it is why we're here. Like I said, Metal Gear got me back into gaming. But the only reason I got to Metal Gears was because we got the NES at Christmas of 1987. And from the first time we jumped on a Goomba and the screen actually moved instead of just being a static, you know, playing Night Stalker or Lock and Chase or something on the Intellivision. Like, it was just blew my mind. And then when I played Zelda, I was like, well, now that changed my life.
Yeah.
Sean, your thoughts on the NES?
I mean, just the names. I mean, the games that are on that system are all. I mean, there's so many good games, but beyond that, I think more important to just what the NES is, more than just the quality of the games, I think is just how important that system was. It changed the game.
Period.
Like you said, before that we had like Intellivision and Atari, and games just didn't.
And it brought us back from the brink in '83 when everything crashed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what can you say we haven't already said? Obviously, Zelda and Mario, at least Ninja Turtles 2 and 3, pretty much all of the Mega Man games. Yeah, Castlevania 1 and 3, not so much 2. DuckTales, for crying out loud. Star Tropics, a game I really just
I've got
wish
to go
would
back
somehow
and beat that. I got
they
to
would
go
just
back
bring
and beat
it back. It's so good. And if it weren't for the NES, I mean, none of it. We wouldn't be doing this right now.
No.
It's just so weird to think of a world without the NES.
Yeah.
I'd like to think at some point somebody would have figured out how to make a successful video game system. Like, if not for Nintendo, somebody else would have done it. But like, there are games that are 30 plus years old, or around 30 years old anyway, that are certainly at least one in my top 10, probably 2 or 3 within my top 15 to 20. And I mean, that alone is just a testament to this system, that it can still be that good and the games can hold up that well decades after the fact.
Yeah.
So
the funny thing with number 3, 2, and 1, I feel like we could do an hour-long podcast on each of these, or we could also not say anything because there's nothing that needs to really be said. When you run through those games, it's like, you know what I mean? It's hard to add anything more than what they actually just the games they had on them. But so now we don't really have a number 2 because at the end of the day, we're calling these basically a tie, 1A, 1B, when it comes to our favorite systems of all time. I finally took the leap and put the PS4 above the Super Nintendo. Sean had the Super Nintendo above the PS4. So our number 1A and 1B, a tie for number 1 in terms of it all, is the PS4 and the SNES. And my default answer for so long has been, what's the best console ever made? SNES. Every time, SNES. But I like, as the years have gone on, I'm like, but I could see the PS4 passing it. And I don't know that it actually has. I probably, if I did rank, I probably should just rank them both number 1.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can't go wrong with either one, but let's run through both of them. So the Super Nintendo, for crying out loud, just these first 3, 4, 5, well, like,
I mean, yeah.
Zelda 3, A Link to the Past. I shouldn't call Zelda 3. I know it's not called Zelda 3. Don't yell at me. Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Contra 3, Turtles in Time, Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, 3, Mario RPG, Mario All-Stars. I mean, Super Mario Kart, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy 3/6, Mega Man X series, Super Castlevania 4, Street Fighter 2. The first time you were able to play it in your home was on the Super Nintendo, and then Turbo came out, and Super and everything else as well. Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3, and Ultimate, I think, also came out on the Super Nintendo. Zombies Ate My Neighbors, NBA Jam. NHL 94, the Madden games, Arch Rivals again. I think it came out. No, that came out on the Genesis. I don't know that it came out on Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I don't think it was on
because it was
Super
like in
Nintendo.
arcades in '89, so maybe not. But I mean, and I know I'm forgetting some by just listing those, but like, just I started off the list with A Link to the Past, Mario World, and Super Metroid. And I don't know. I don't know, man. Like.
So the funny thing I'm noticing as we're going through this, I could probably come up with like 50 games that are in my top 20.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, but when I look at the Super Nintendo, I'm like, it
needs its own category.
There's easily, I'm trying not even to look at the list, probably at least 5 games or so that I would think are in my top 20. Zelda 3, I mean, it's a top. I'm calling it Zelda 3.
I know.
A Link to the Past and Ocarina. It's a toss-up. If Ocarina is not my favorite game of all time, Link to the Past is. Mario World, probably the best platformer ever.
Yeah.
Super Metroid, the game's fallen off a little bit for me since I discovered more of the other. I mean, to me, Metroidvania was Super Metroid, and that's all there was.
Yeah.
It's fallen off a little bit. There's definitely been some games that have surpassed it, but it's just kind of the OG. I know it's not the OG, like that's Metroid, but I mean, this is the one that like it perfected it. Contra 3 is probably one of the most fun games. Like, I will never hang out with like Brent and not find a reason to fire this game up and just play through it, knock it out in like 20 minutes, and it's just so much fun. Like, and then Ninja Turtles 4. I guess that was actually Ninja Turtles 4, but Turtles in Time, like you said, like as good as the NES is, a lot of the best games on the NES were surpassed by their SNES versions.
I mean,
like
A Link to the Past, better. Mario World, better.
Super
That's
Metroid,
like neck and neck, but it is better. Super Metroid, definitely better.
Contra
3, better.
Ninja
Turtles in Time,
better.
Mega Man X, that's it's almost like 2 different games.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't include that, but I mean, just right there, like the best games the NES had, Super Nintendo had better versions of that series. You know what I mean?
Right. And like all 3 Donkey Kong Country games are good to great. I think Donkey Kong Country 2 is definitely great. I think Mario RPG is truly the first RPG game. Yeah. Even I always call it baby's first RPG, but like it was so easy to pick up and play. It's almost not even, I mean, it's an RPG, but it's like so simple, but so well done. Mario Kart, I spent so many hours playing that game over at Brent's. Chrono Trigger is an all-time game for me. Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy 3, like Mega Man X, Castlevania 4, Street Fighter, like it just goes on and on and on.
It doesn't stop, yeah.
And so many of these games to me are still so much fun to just pick up and play. And I think ultimately that's why I had to go on my own personal list. I put the SNES as number 1, if for no other reason than that replay factor and how easy and just stress-free it is to be able to say, you know, I'm going to go play through Mario World again, or A Link to the Past again, or Super Metroid, a game that just seemed so massive back in the day.
It's only like 8 hours.
Right. Like it's, and you could, if you know what you're doing, you could probably beat it in like
speed run it
3-4 hours without even like trying to speed run it. Contra 3 I've already talked about. Turtles in Time is never not fun to just pick up and play. I mean, Mario All-Stars is all the NES games, but arguably better. Mario Kart doesn't quite hold up, but God, that was so much fun at the time. Like, there's just so many games that you can just pick up and play and not feel like you're starting to read like War and Peace or something. Like, you know, it's just like you just pick it up, play it, maybe beat it, maybe not, but like, I don't know. Even when I look at, and I'll let you do PS4, but like when I look at the games on PS4, like they're all unbelievable. Like they're so good. And with the exception of, I don't know, one maybe 2, 3. Okay, there's a few. I never went back and played any of them again.
Yeah.
And I can't say that about Super Nintendo. There's like no limit to how many times I can play through these games and still enjoy them. On the official list, we're calling these 1A, 1B. On my list, I did have Super Nintendo as number 1.
Yep, and I will never, ever argue with that.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was listing out all these games, I was like, I may have made a mistake. But I think for me, so yeah, my number 1 was the PS4, where they're tied with us. 4 of my top 10 games of all time are on the PS4. So because of that, I'm like,
really?
that's more, it's God of War, Horizon, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Uncharted 4 came in at number 10. But yeah, so if you go through the games on the PS4, so you got God of War, I just said them, God of War, Horizon, Metal Gear Solid 5, Uncharted 4, Spider-Man, Resident Evil 7 2, Resident Evil 2 Remake, which I think is my favorite. What did I say?
Resident Evil 7 2.
I did. Resident Evil 2 Remake, which I think is my favorite Resident Evil game of all time. Bloodborne, I played it 3 years after it came out, and I was friggin' hooked. And I'm bad at video games, but there was like that series of Let's Plays was so much fun. Even though we didn't know what we were doing for the first 3 episodes because we recorded them in one night, we didn't know we could do a light attack. But like, it was such a. It wasn't like what I've always heard about the Souls games and stuff is that it's just so punishingly difficult and you're just that's how I felt when I played Celeste. It was just so punishingly, but this it was like no, but you learn
there's
the
learning curve is
so
perfect.
much to it and it's so good. What Remains of Edith Finch, Firewatch, Resogun, the first game I played on the system. And then you had all like the PS3 remasters that were re-released on the PS4, both Arkham games, GTA 5, added first-person mode, added so much to the game. The Last of Us, Journey, so on and so on and so on. And even great indies like The Messenger. I know it's not exclusive, but like The Messenger came there. Broforce, one of the most fun games we've probably ever played.
Yeah.
It Bloodstained, I would put that on there. I didn't have that on there. I think that's up there now. The thing that I think could end up pushing this over the top, maybe even for you, is we still got 2 games to come out that could really sway this. One is Death Stranding. Now, I am not under any delusions of grandeur that I think this will be a top 10 game of all time for me. I do not think it will. I've said it on the podcast. At this point, I don't even know what I think about that game anymore. However, probably in February, we've got The Last of Us Part 2. And everything that I've seen of that game so far.
And Final Fantasy 7.
Oh, that's true. But like with The Last of Us 2, that game, if they nail it, which they will, that's going to end up. I don't want to set myself up that I'm doing what I shouldn't do. It's what I do with Metal Gear Solid 5. It's what I do with Batman vs. Superman. But in my mind, I could see that game challenging Metal Gear Solid 3 for my favorite game of all time.
Really?
Like, I just think that everything they did with the first one was so perfect, and it would have been way higher up on my personal list if I didn't get it spoiled for me before I was finally able to play it. But everything they're doing with this game, like Naughty Dog is just the best of the best when it comes to games. And if they nail this the way that I think they're going to nail it, I have such high hopes for this game that it could just make me say definitively now the PS4 is my favorite console. Really, in my mind right now they probably are tied, but you can't go wrong with either one.
Right, yeah. And like you said, you could put NES in that conversation too, and I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, if somebody said
I'll
NES,
hear you
I'm
out.
like, I get it.
I can't make a case against it.
I think it's tough to rank the NES. I really do think it's tough to rank the NES over the SNES. I do. I think that's a lot of nostalgia.
That's where it comes into play. You're ranking the system, not the games on the system. Right. So I can understand, like, yeah, Link to the Past is better than Zelda 1. Yep. Certainly better than Zelda 2. If you told me you thought Mario 3 was better than Mario World,
I'm fine with that.
Okay, but I think Mario World is definitely better.
You can't say Metroid's better than Super Metroid. You can't.
Contra's better than Contra. Metroid's better than Metroid.
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles 4 is better than the other Ninja Turtles. Like, but you're not just saying which system has the best games. You're saying what is the, like, your favorite system. And again, that's really what this came down to, is your favorite. Somebody out there watching this right now, maybe the PS3 is super meaningful to you. Maybe the Genesis is more to you than it is even to us. If you told me that was your favorite system of all time, I mean, who are we to argue?
Yeah.
But to me, yeah, those top three, easily, obviously the top two, and probably the top three with the NES in there as well. I could even make a case for all three of those. PS2, that's where you lose me. I think it's right where it should be at number 4, but the PS4, the SNES, and the NES, if you told me to make a case for any of those being the best system of all time, I could do it.
Well, the funny thing, too, is before this, and now the PlayStation sold 100 million units, it's like, before this generation, there were people like Rasan and other people saying, because mobile games were blowing up. They weren't really. You just had whales that were spending all this money on mobile games that were driving up this revenue and all this other stuff. People were saying consoles are dead. Console gaming's dead. It's the end of an era. And I'm like, 100 million sold. Where are you at? And the Xbox is considered a disappointment, and it's probably the Xbox One. It's probably sold damn near 50 million now. Like, there's 50 million. I know it's not 86 or whatever like the 360 sold, but it's nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
And with everything they've done for the next generation, I don't know. It's a hell of a time to be a gamer.
That is true. That is definitely true.
That's it. This has been our first bonus episode on Patreon. Again, I'm not going to do the rigmarole because you're a patron, so you know everything. Just know from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you so much for doing this. It means the world to us. Seriously, it blows our minds that you would support us. And we are eternally grateful. We hope you'll continue to do it. We'll have more bonus episodes every month coming forward if you stay with us at this level. But until the next time, Sean, go ahead and take us out.
Thank you for playing.